everyone. Happy Friday. We made it to another happy hour. My last Friday banned, hopefully, from my main YouTube channel, but that's all right because we're going to work it out on Actively Unwoke today. I'm also simulcasting this happy hour in a whole bunch of different places. I'm doing it on my Facebook page now, just, for giggles. I've got a Rockvin channel, I've got an Odyssey channel, so we are live in like 4 different places right now, but of course YouTube is usually the home. Today we are on my second channel, which is called Actively Unwoke. I do expect that happy hour will ultimately end up on the Actively Unwoke channel as opposed to my main channel. But, I'm still building up the audience on there. So hopefully, guys, if you are not subscribed to Actively Unwoke, you give it a subscription today just to have it, just in case I get another BS YouTube ban for content that they manually reviewed and approved. That's okay. We're going to be back on Monday. I'm right now actually trying to schedule a stream with the CEO of Odyssey to come on my YouTube channel once I get the ban lifted, and he's going to talk about why Odyssey is a far superior platform to YouTube. So maybe he can convince me of that. I already think that Odyssey is pretty great. All right, guys. So let's see. We've got as always, a bunch of different orders of business. I'm wearing my Romero Brito clown sweater today. You can see, this piece of art behind me, that's a Romero Brito. You can see like this is his specific style, but it also looks a little bit like a clown because today we are going to be entering the clown world that is the fat activist, fat positivity, body positivity, whatever the heck, critical fat studies. We are going to be entering this crazy world with this panel called Dismantling Fat Shaming and Weight Stigma. And this is from Canada, so it's going to be extra woke. Food Share Toronto and Food Network Canada brought together a distinguished panel to discuss fat shaming and weight stigma and how they intersect with other forms of oppression like racism and ableism. So we've got some good old intersectionality going today. So I think that this is going to be a really fun thing to watch. It gives us a little bit of a break from the race stuff. We do the race stuff all the time. And as I tried to explain on Adam Krigler's channel last night, the whole thing with critical theory is that you have to look at the word in between critical and theory, and that's just the tool they're trying to use. So the biggest thing that we all hear about right now is critical race theory, right? If we look at that, race is the tool they're trying to use within the framework of critical theory. But race is not the only tool that they have. They also have critical gender theory. They have critical queer theory. They have critical fat studies. They have disability studies. There are all these different types of critical race theory, or excuse me, not of critical race theory, of critical theory. And the principles are basically the same. The reason that they rely on race so much is frankly because I think it's the most effective at riling people up and keeping us divided, because we all know that the entire goal of this whole thing has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with gender, has nothing to do with sexuality. It only has to do with power, and they will use whatever tool they need to use in order to gain as much power as possible. And one of the tools in their toolbox is this fat studies, positivity, this whole weight thing, which is a little weird to me because weight is not an immutable characteristic. Like, I could get my butt to the gym if I wanted to. It's not an immutable characteristic, but it is something that they use. So today we are going to watch a panel and hear their arguments about weight shaming or fat shaming and weight stigma. Now, before we get into that, of course, we have a couple orders of business. Number one is the best way to support my work is always to join my Locals community. Locals is free to join if you just want to lurk, if you just want to see what's being talked about and maybe watch some ad-free videos. That's totally cool. So you can join for free at kb.locals.com. The link is in the description below. But if you want to support the work I'm doing and unlock all of the features in Locals, to include 2 Zoom calls a week, to include being able to comment and interact on the post, to include our debate club, we have a book club tomorrow, we have our supporter Discord, we have all sorts of stuff going on in Locals. And if you want to unlock those, you have to become a supporter. You can do that at $5 a month or more if you want, but are under no obligation. You can do it at $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. And you can also make one-time gifts to support my work. Locals is actually the thing that really gives me, frankly, the peace of mind to know that I'm always going to have that steady income, so I can be able to focus on doing other stuff to help fight back against this nonsense and hopefully help support you guys and provide you a community that you can go and find your people. My locals members are awesome. Many of them are, I think my chat is completely, if you are a member of my locals, please chat in and say yes, because I want to see how many people are in the chat right now. I think there are quite a few, but my locals community is just awesome. They're the best people in the world. They keep me sane, and I want to welcome as many sane people as possible into the community to join us. All right, so we have Ava, we have Kieran, we have Reagan. I think Caleb's in my locals. I'm pretty sure we have Janice. Yeah, so a whole bunch of people in my locals. You guys are awesome. You're the best. I appreciate you so much. All right, next thing. And I'm not exactly sure how this is gonna work for this one, right? Because I created our unwoke bingo card based on race and critical race theory, but we're still gonna give unwoke bingo a try because it did say in this description, it said and fat shaming and weight stigma and how they intersect with other forms of oppression like racism and ableism. So I don't think it's too out of the realm of possibility that we might be able to still play our bingo pretty well. When we're doing bingo, of course, you get your free space in the middle. Then we're going for a line or we're going for those corners. And if you get a bingo, just yell bingo in the chat. You don't win a dang thing. But it's just something to keep us busy as we're watching what can sometimes be a boring training. The whole goal of happy hour is to really understand specifically what these people are saying. When I was on Adam's show last night, what became really clear is that there is a big disconnect between what these people are actually saying and all the trainings that we've watched together and the trainings that I've watched on my own and what generally is being reported. Because what is being reported oftentimes tends to be the most absolute sensationalized things that they say, but it's not the most common of what they say. And I think it's deeply important that we understand specifically what the woke are saying as the very best way to fight back against them. Because if we're just showing all of the alarmist stuff all the time, and I'm not saying that's not important, but if we're just showing that all the time, we start to look like crazy people. And so it's very important to watch what they're actually saying. And bingo just entertains us while we watch. Now, if someone gets a bingo, then we go for blackout bingo. No one, I don't think yet, has actually gotten blackout bingo in a single training, although some people have gotten really close. So we're still waiting for that. You get bragging rights for it. Naruto says China banned feminine men from being on TV. Well, good luck. You know what's so funny is I was seeing some right-wing influencers on Twitter yesterday talking about how China is the better location because they're banning effeminate men on TV and embracing masculinity. I was like, okay, dude, go live in China then. If you really think that China is the better option to America, go live in China, you snowflakes. All right. So that's our bingo game. Now the next thing we need to do is I'm going to pour myself a beer. I am, because it's happy hour and I'm going to have a beer because this is what I do on Friday afternoons. I've actually been Victor went and bought me beer today because I was laying in bed until way too late. And so I heard Victor getting in the car and I heard it start because he's done something to his car to make it really loud. I was like, Victor's going to get me beer. So he brought back the same beer that I've been drinking the last 2 weeks. He did his job. I would not be able to do this without my husband, so I'm always very appreciative of him. And so I've got a couple options, and I'm going to give you guys let me know which one you want me to drink. I have the Nitro Coconut Truffle, which is really good. This is a really good beer. It's really good. I have Warlock, which is an Imperial Pumpkin Stout, which is very good. They're all very good. They're all Southern Tier. Southern Tier is basically my favorite brewery. Their beer is so good. And I have the Traditional Pumpkin, which is an Imperial Pumpkin Ale. It tastes just like a pumpkin pie. Which one should I drink, guys? Should I drink coconut? Should I drink the pumpkin stout or the pumpkin ale? Which one do you think? And while you're at it, type what you're drinking in the chat. Could be water or tea or, anything stronger. What are you guys drinking today? Let's see it. There's a little bit of a delay, which is why I'm kind of waiting. Hang on. Oh, you guys think I should drink the pumpkin ale? All right. Well, we'll pour a pumpkin ale in one quick sec. I just have to send a DM to someone. Hang on. I know I should have done this before. I know. Okay, now let's pour the pumpkin ale. So it looks like some people are drinking water. I know it's early for some people. Some people are drinking coffee. It's Friday. It's like being in the airport. All right. So we got our pumpkin ale. Whoop. I want to get as much head as possible because that's where all the aroma is. I can smell the pumpkin from here. It's just like pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie is my favorite. I know not everyone likes pumpkin, but pumpkin pie, pumpkin, really anything is my favorite. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it through another week. Dr. Pepper. Naruto's drinking a Dr. Pepper. I never understood the appeal of Dr. Pepper, if I'm going to be completely honest about the situation. Oh, good. So on Odyssey, the only chat I have on there is feel free to head back to the kitchen. Oh, you can go F yourself, dude, and you're going to get a little blocky block. Block. I'll put him in timeout. He gets a warning. Let's see. All right. Let's get this party started, guys. Let's watch the stream. I just need to set it up correctly. Who is ready to watch a panel on fat shaming or fat studies or weight positivity or whatever the heck this is? I'm not even sure. Who's ready to go? Type Y into the chat if you're ready to go and mock these absurd people relentlessly for our own amusement while also learning what they're actually saying in the real world. Yeah, so I want to say before we get started, hang on, we're going to bring that up. But so people are asking about that school board meeting, guys. I'm thinking about doing that school board meeting next week on my main channel. But if you didn't watch that school board meeting from California, oh, it was glorious. It was glorious. But maybe we'll do that on Monday to kind of celebrate my channel coming back. We will watch the school board meeting together. We will revel in the glory of that school board meeting. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, check back in on Monday on my main channel because it was awesome. It was the best. All right, guys, we're all ready to get started. I think I've plugged in the audio correctly, but let me know if you can't hear it, and let's go.
This afternoon's webinar. It's time to dismantle fat shaming and weight stigma. Hosted by Food Share and Food Network Canada. I am your moderator, Sabrina Strings, and I want to begin by acknowledging the sacred land that UCI
Land Blessing
professor is located on, which is the land of
Land Blessing. We haven't had a good land blessing in a while, and I should say this was on September 28th, 2020. So it's about a year ago. But we haven't had a good land blessing in a while. I'm pretty glad we started off on that note. Elizabeth says, I was there at that meeting in Natomas. I live in Sacramento. Oh yeah, that's right. That's near Sacramento. Dude, Elizabeth, how was it to be at that meeting? Like, was it glorious? Was there give us the details, like take us through it. Maybe you can come on my channel on Monday with me and relive the experience as we watch the video.
Of the Tongva peoples. I also want to acknowledge the sacred land that Food Share and Food Network Canada are located on. It is in the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe. And
can I also just say that I actually really enjoy that we're going to have a sign language interpreter. I didn't realize she was a sign language interpreter when I picked this video, but I love watching. Do you guys love watching sign language interpreters at like conferences and things? They get so into it. It's so great. This is the best. I should have had a special bingo square for sign language interpreter.
The Missy Sagas of the Credit. The territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands around the Great Lakes. The organizers at Food Share and the Food Network recognize the many nations of indigenous people who presently live on this land, those who have spent time here, and the ancestors who have hunted and gathered on this land. Thank you for joining us today. As I've mentioned, I'm Sabrina Strings. I'm an associate professor of sociology at the University of California.
Ooh, University of California, glorious. Naruto says Dr. Pepper is based in Texas. They're the freedom pop. I don't care. I still don't understand the appeal of Dr. Pepper. I don't. I'm sorry. Even after all of it, I still prefer. If I'm going to drink soda, I'm going to drink Coke probably. Vanilla Coke if they have it. Vanilla Coke is the best, but they stopped making Vanilla Coke Zero, so I stopped drinking it.
At Irvine. I am also the author of the book, Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, which was published by NYU Press in 2019. I'm excited about this panel in large part because I have been in many interviews about my work, and therefore I've had the opportunity to express my viewpoints on many different occasions.
Look at
but
the interpreter.
rarely have I had the opportunity to query other individuals, especially people from diverse backgrounds, about their perspectives on how to end fat shaming. So I'm grateful.
For people who might be joining Happy Hour for the first time, I do not agree with this panel. We are mocking this panel. We are making fun of them. We are simply learning what these crazy woke people are saying so we can better combat it. So I just want to be clear. I don't agree with what this panel is saying. I'm not promoting it for that reason. I want to mock it relentlessly and also learn from it.
For this opportunity. When sharing or posting about the panel on social media, please use the hashtags end fat shaming and hashtag end weight stigma. Also,
those are horrible
please
hashtags.
Tag at FoodShareTO and at Food Network CA so that we can continue the conversation online. Today, we have two interpreters from the Toronto Sign Language Interpreter Service who will be interchangeably providing ASL interpretation for today's panel. So welcome to them as well. FoodShare has been advancing work based on the acknowledgement that we all need to actively work to dismantle forms of oppression that exist throughout the food system and beyond. Today, we'll be talking specifically about the oppressions associated with fat shaming and weight stigma and the need to dismantle these systems. I'm pleased to be joined by a group of incredible folks from various countries for today's conversation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jill Andrew, who's in Canada. Jill, feel free to turn on your video at this time. Thank you. Good to see you. We're also joined by Maya Fino of the United States.
Yep.
In addition, we have Ashley Gillen of New Zealand. Great to see you, Maya and Ashley. Anshuman Idamseti, who's also in Canada. Hi, Anshuman. And Natalie Borch in Canada.
A big illustrious. Oh my God. Sorry, I looked away for a second and there was a big illustrious panel.
Starting off with a question that will be addressed to everyone on the panel. Fat shaming and weight stigma are everywhere.
Okay, I want to be clear. Like, I don't really care how much you weigh. Obviously, I'm not like the thinnest woman in the world, and like, you know, whatever. There are reasons, but like I don't really care. I don't judge people for how much they weigh, but sometimes it just takes your breath away. It really does. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, I don't think anyone's bad for how much they weigh. I think people are fine. I just hope some of these. I just hope she's buying an extra seat on the airplane. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
But many folks who do not live in a larger body have trouble understanding the issue or calling it out where and when it shows up. Can you each speak a bit about fat shaming and weight stigma and how it shows up in your respective areas of work? Feel free.
Am I going? Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
I just saw the borders. Oh gosh. Um, I mean, Dr. Strings, you've wrote about this extensively in your beautiful book, and there's been so much research and academic work around this, and there's also been so much lived experience. We call this fat shaming, but ultimately I do believe this is anti-Blackness, and that this is anti-indigeneity. And
wait, so like hang on, this guy has only been speaking for less than a minute. This is 5 minutes into the presentation, and they've already said that anti-fatness has to do with anti-blackness. Did I hear that right? Hang on, let me just.
In your beautiful book, and there's been so much research and academic work around this, and there's also been so much lived experience. We call this fat shaming, but ultimately I do believe this is anti-Blackness, and that this is anti-indigeneity.
Anti-Blackness and anti-indigeneity. So if we're talking about fat shaming, really what we're doing is racist. That's within 5 minutes of this panel starting. Congratulations.
And
we've already become intersectional.
This is a campaign to continue European expansion, to continue white supremacist ideals of what it is to live in the world, who owns the land, who should have access to its resources.
Did you hear what he just said? Who owns the land? This is the crux of what these are the things you guys need to pay attention to when we're watching these types of presentations, because regardless of whether it's critical race theory or gender theory or queer theory or fat studies or whatever the heck, you have to listen to when they're talking about power and ownership, because that's where they give themselves away. These are the things that they really care about. This is one of the reasons I am so committed to not talking about critical race theory as being anti-white, because at the end of the day, it's not about that. It is about the power structure. It's about the power structure. So anytime they're talking about ownership or power, that's what we need to pay attention to. White people are not the boogeyman when it comes to critical race theory, or critical theory in general. Capitalism is the boogeyman. Capitalism is what they're really fighting. Capitalism is the thing that they want to destroy. They don't want to destroy white people. They want to destroy capitalism. And once you make that shift in your head and you start looking at things through that lens, that's when you really start to understand what this ideology is all about. It is about destroying capitalism. But I just want to rewind that real quick. This is, okay, 523. Just going to go back, listen to that again.
Continue European expansion. Continue white supremacist ideals of what it is to live in the world. Who owns the land?
Who owns the land?
Who should have access to its resources?
Who should have access to the resources?
Who is worthy of living, right? It's about value extraction. And I mean, it's this hydra-headed thing that appears in so many different ways. With my own work as an artist, I find that my body is policed on the many platforms we have. Actually, when I say many, I mean like the 4 to 5 apps we now call the internet. Like on Instagram, my work is constantly flagged and is constantly deleted, often with no mechanism to appeal what's happening. But a similar image created by someone who embodies what you would call a straight size body, a normative figure, a slender figure.
Is he saying that he gets censored on Instagram because he's overweight? Is that the argument that he's making? But of course, we really know that he means I'm being censored on Instagram because I'm black. Because he's already said that fatness isn't about fatness, it's about racism.
They're allowed to cook. You know, they're praised, they're celebrated, they're surfaced in hashtags. And you see these sorts of systems throughout society. And it's a constant battle that I personally have to face.
I feel like we've seen this woman before. I don't know who she is. Natalie Borch? I feel like we've seen this woman before in one of our happy hour trainings.
Just to try to get my message and try to interrogate these systems of white supremacy. And we're often deplatformed. We're often the first to go.
Precisely.
Along with
what?
Fat trans people, fat disabled people.
We're often deplatformed. We're often the first to go, along with fat trans people. Okay.
and of course, Black and Indigenous people as a whole. So it's less about aesthetics and it's less about romance, although those things are very much real. We are animals seeking our own. But it intersects at almost every sort of touch point of society and interrelation.
Thank you for that. You know, this whole question of censorship is so important because when we are trying to uplift our voices, frequently what we find is that there are people who are going to simply ignore us or attempt to shut us down before they fight us, and then we ultimately win. But the first few steps are always an attempt to silence people with dissident voices. So thank you. How about others on the panel? How does the question of weight stigma show up in your work?
I was raising my hand. Maybe you didn't see it, Doctor.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, feel free to jump in.
We're in a virtual classroom here, right?
I guess we are, yes.
She has good art behind her, at least.
Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to be on this panel. The way I wanted to discuss this idea of fat shaming, you know, it is absolutely intersectional. I often refer to it as a triple threat against our Black bodies, you know, as a woman, as a Black individual, and as a fat person. In my work, I talked about it also, borrowing from W.E.B. and talking about this idea of triple consciousness, where we must always be walking into this world thinking about you know, our gender, thinking about size, and also thinking about racial identity. For me, in the work that I do, whether that was in education or now in politics, there is this insidious reading of Black women's bodies, bodies that are large, bodies that are fat, as aggressive, as dominating, domineering, taking up too much space, not knowing our place, you know? And the way I see that work out is, you know, if I speak, you know, with a strong tone, I am being rude, you know, I am being an angry Black woman. So we see how the tropes, the racist tropes, the misogynistic tropes that are often used, you know, to stereotype and to box in women, and in my particular case, Black women, they're exacerbated when you add fat hatred onto it as well. I don't usually say fat phobia, because when I think of phobias, I think of fear and, you know, oh, it's something, I'm just afraid. This is actually about hatred. This is actually about pushing people out, excluding people, erasing bodies. You know, whether we're talking about the way I'm sure many of us on this call may have been treated by our doctors, treated by teachers because of size, treated in the public sphere, you know, eating while fat. I've had experiences shopping while fat and Black and a woman, you know, so we certainly cannot, you know, you can't separate, we can't disaggregate our bodies from the world, you know, and all levels of our subjectivity comes to the fore. And fat hatred, you know, just intersects in it in very problematic ways. You know, I also think that we have to talk about this notion of good bodies and bad bodies. We have to think about how fat bodies, you know, are seen as sort of like the physical embodiment of poor citizenship, you know, of poor.
Did she say fat bodies or Black bodies? Hang on.
About this notion of good bodies and bad bodies. We have to think about how fat bodies, you know, are seen as sort of like the physical embodiment of poor citizenship, you know, of.
What does it mean to have poor citizenship? I'm honestly asking. I don't know the answer to that. What does she mean by that?
You know, of poor record, you know, like we haven't attained the self-help that society thinks we should, you know. So really, it's about.
Well, see, because here's the thing. This is a self-worth issue. This is a self-worth issue. People who look for validation from other people will always be disappointed because most people are extremely selfish. Like, it doesn't matter if you have the perfect body, the perfect hair, the perfect skin, the perfect whatever. Most people are more focused on themselves than they are on anything going on in the world, certainly anything going on with you. And so when you're looking for validation from other people, you're always going to be disappointed no matter how perfect you are. Instead of looking for validation from other people, give validation to yourself. And this is the problem with this entire woke ideology. You know, I heard a story just the other day that I think you guys are going to be hearing a lot about in the coming weeks. I can't talk about all the details just yet, but like, so to talk about it at a very high level, it was about a Black guy who is an extremely talented person whose talent is utterly squandered because he's constantly worried about people around him being racist because he's the only Black guy in his group. So you have this extremely talented Black guy that could go so far, that could achieve greatness, but because he is always looking for racism in the group that he is in, his talent is squandered because of it. Why is that happening? Because he is looking for validation externally. He is not looking for validation. He's not giving the validation to himself that he wants from others. And that is the crux of all of these goddamn problems, is the woke have never learned how to do this. They are looking for validation from society rather than doing the work and giving themselves the validation they're seeking.
About a blame. You know, a lot of the times you are blamed, you know, because of your size. And because of your size, you don't have access to certain jobs, or because of your size, that's why you're ill, or because of your size, that's why you don't have access to resources, because you're tapping into our resources and taking more than you deserve. These are all the kinds of ideas that circle in my mind when I think about how fat shaming manifests in my world and in those around me. So it's a very it's a nuanced topic, but it's one that absolutely can be discussed without a simultaneous conversation that looks at race and gender, and I would also argue class. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for those powerful comments. It really does bring us back to this whole question surrounding what makes people feel so comfortable being so obviously anti-fat, so willing to stigmatize fat bodies. And I really like what you said about how this is really about hatred, right? And when we talk about fear, there is a clear connection between fear and hatred when we think especially about race and racism. But when we say fear, people sometimes think that's maybe a much more tepid relationship to the problem. But when we call it out as hatred, we know fundamentally that it has nothing to do with any concern about a person's health, right? It has nothing to do with trying to reform them and make them better. It's all about a particular type of bigotry. So thank you so much for articulating that.
And if I can just wrap around the piece around fear and choice, the reason why I say hatred over fear, you know, when we're afraid, it's a physical, biological reaction, and there often isn't choice in that. But when you choose to hate,
Wow.
There is choice. And I think by calling it fat hatred, you know, by not, you know, trying.
You know what she's doing there, though? This is so insidious. So what she just said is like, you know, fear. So she uses the term fat hatred over fat phobia because what she says is fear is basically an involuntary reflex, whereas hatred is something more proactive. So what she's trying to do is frame everyone who might disagree with her, everyone who might look at her the wrong way, everyone who might question her. She is trying to take them from kind of like a passive here's what it is. She's trying to take them from unconscious bias, which is obviously something they talk about a lot, unconscious bias. They have this unconscious bias training. She's trying to take them from unconscious bias to proactive hatred to make them seem more nefarious than they actually are. And it could be for anything. Any microaggression could be a reason that she might say, you hate me because I'm fat. She's taken it from a passive stance to a very active, proactive, or a very proactive stance, which is really insidious. It's meant to demonize in other people.
To pathologize behavior, we allow accountability. We allow accountability.
And then she's calling it accountability
so
on top of it.
That's why I go with hatred as opposed to fear. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. The accountability piece is so important, especially because of the blaming that you were mentioning earlier. It's so easy for straight-sized individuals to say something like, how come they don't reform themselves? Why don't they try harder or do better, right? They're blaming them. But when we identify their behavior as a form of hatred, we can recognize that they're responsible for perpetuating harm, right? So they are actually accountable for a lot of the problems that relate to fat stigma.
So what did she just say? Once you frame it as hatred, that's when you can make them accountable for perpetuating harm and the stigma against, fat people. They're trying to make it so that they're framing it in terms of proactive responsibility rather than a subconscious, just passive, like you aren't even aware of it thing. And they're doing that so that they can hold people accountable for their actions
by perpetuating the harm that fat stigma causes. So thank you. Anyone else like to sound off about their work surrounding fat shaming?
Sorry, Maya. Okay. I work in the fitness industry, which is riddled with fat phobia, and it starts with a lot of the language that is used and the images that is used, and the fitness industry has been putting forward this idea of selling us what a fit body is supposed to look like. And that is thin, that is white, that is able-bodied, and that is young. And so there's many layers, as Dr. Jill was just speaking about, to unpack that. And it shows up a lot. I hear it in, with fitness instructors and in personal trainers. We hear, all right, let's work off that pizza from last night. Who wants to earn their glass of wine tonight? As if food needs to be earned. No one needs to earn the right to eat that day.
No one
and we don't need to work off anything.
Okay, notice they've switched up interpreters. We have a different interpreter. We should grade the interpreters. We should talk about which interpreter we like the best. But what I really want to say to Natalie's point is, listen, is food a basic human right? Not really. But you know what's really not a basic human right? A glass of wine at the end of the day. That's a luxury. And some people like that motivation, and that motivation is a positive thing for some people. I used to say all the time, I really need to go back to Orange Theory. Has anyone in the chat ever done Orange Theory? I need to go back to Orange Theory because I've been paying them for a solid year, but I wasn't allowed to use it for half the time. But I really do actually like Orange Theory. But what I always would say when I was going to Orange Theory, like almost every day, I was like, at the end of the class, I was like, I'm getting a cookie. Like, I've earned a cookie. And I rarely did, but it's just like it makes you feel good, right? It can be a motivating tool. Like you want it, like that's not a bad thing. And these people try to make everything surrounding, what might be motivating for someone. Again, to go back to the point that the bald woman was making. Maybe she's not bald. Maybe she just has her hair pulled back, but she looks bald. Like to going back to her point, she's trying to make it seem that if someone says after a hard workout at the gym, like, I'm going to go have a cookie, she's trying to make it seem like that is proactive hatred of fat people, and it's just not. It has nothing to do with them. Most people need to understand that everyone around you is inherently selfish. We are always going to look out for our own needs before we look out for other people's needs. That's part of our survival mechanism. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but they're trying to make it seem like you are selfish for looking out for your own needs first. I'm sorry. My need to be motivated to get off my ass and go to the gym trumps your need to not feel guilty for eating, an extra cookie
that you ate. But this, fear marketing by the fitness industry is what has been super problematic. And what I'm trying to do is dismantle the idea of exercise and losing weight, which has always been, my entire life, those two things have been connected. And, fitness was only about burning calories. And in my teens and 20s, I only ever worked out to watch that little number on the elliptical that told me how many calories so that I knew how many points of food I was.
Yeah, actually, Richard makes a good point here. This is fitness shaming. That is correct. I agree with that. This is fitness shaming. These people will say, like, I remember like before I left the left, and like I was again, like I was going to Orange Theory like every day. I was really proud of what I was doing. I was like a really good rower. I could outrow almost any woman in my Orange Theory. I could like lift more weight than almost any woman in my Orange Theory. I was really proud of that. I've always been really good at those things. And, you know, so I would post this stuff on Facebook, and then my friends would say, "Carlin, you're fat shaming." I'm like, "No, I just had a really good workout at the gym. Leave me alone." Emily L says, having lost 200 plus pounds. Oh my God, Emily, congratulations. That's insanity. Oh my God. I'm more qualified to talk on this than any of these people. They're hurting themselves and others simply by not accepting reality. Yeah, I've got rowing skills, man. I could row. I got the fastest 200. I get really big. Well, again, like I haven't been rowing. I haven't worked out in a long time because my back got all effed up, and it's finally starting to get better. But like the rower actually kills my back, which is why I haven't been doing it. But no, in my Orange Theory, I was the fastest woman in my age group. For the 200 meter, I rode the 200 meter in like 32 seconds or something like that. I get massive watts when I row, when I'm actually in shape. I get like, 500, 600 watts, which is pretty damn good for a woman, to be honest. And someone that doesn't I don't really have endurance, but I can go really, really powerfully for like really short periods of time. So, yay.
Was allowed to eat that day, and we need to break those two up. We need to break up losing weight from fitness and working out, and think of fitness as, we talk a lot about the mental health benefits of it.
Caleb asks, excuse me, what happened to my back? Honestly, they tell me that I put myself under so much stress that it's screwed up. My lower back is real screwed up. Is the long and the short. My lower back is really, really screwed up, but it's getting better.
The sleep benefits, the libido benefits, all of those are the things that I try to focus more on, and less as, exercise as a punishment. But we have a lot of work to do in my industry, in dance, in yoga, in fitness. There's a lot of people who have a lot of trauma from experiences in those spaces.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I sometimes shy away from using the word exercise, because it's triggering for people, given this long-standing connection between exercise and slenderness. Whereas you can move your body in a healthy way for your heart, for your muscles, for your joints, and not at all be concerned about.
Who is triggered by the word exercise? Is anyone triggered by the word exercise? Has our resiliency level reached so low that we are triggered by the word exercise? Oh my God.
About whether or not you lose weight, but there is this very tight coupling between those two things in our culture, right? So if we want to just encourage people to move their bodies in ways that would be healthy, we have to think about what kinds of language can we use that can dissociate that connection or sever that connection.
Exactly. And also the assumption that anytime we see anybody in a larger body in a fitness space, the assumption that they are there to change their body. That's what we need to challenge, in ourselves, in our, friends and family, and challenge that.
Exactly. Thank you for those comments. And Maya, I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, yes. I primarily engage in policy advocacy as well as organizing. And I think that aesthetics is actually the clearest way in which you see fat hatred, fat phobia present in the work. I often think about the people who are
I just want to point out, she just said that aesthetics is the way that is the key to this. She's all done up. She's all done up. She cares about aesthetics. All done up, hair done, makeup beautiful. I mean, I'm gonna give it to her. She doesn't like for her weight. She doesn't look bad. I'm sorry. Might not be unpopular, but she looks nice. She did herself up. She cares about aesthetics. And then she's like, aesthetics are the problem.
As activists and scholars, like globally or very publicly, and it's often not fat people. It's often not trans people, not disabled people. They're often not dark-skinned as well. I think in many ways, particularly when it comes to fatness, fat people are not seen as disciplined enough to be experts or willing to engage in the hard work or like engaged to have the expertise. And I think it's fundamentally fat hatred and fat phobia.
Adrian says, in the future, the first people to die in the apocalypse will be those triggered by exercise. They won't be running. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, and for myself, being a straight-sized ally, I've talked about this frequently, which is that
A
lot of the
straight-sized
comments that I make,
ally.
it's possible that one of the main reasons why I'm able to speak publicly and get this kind of recognition is that I am a straight-sized person. So that, you know, obviously the work matters, but then also the aesthetics continue to matter, even in this space.
Straight-sized ally.
So it's so important to keep in mind, which is one of the reasons why, you know, in recent interviews, when I'm talking to people about this, I tell people I don't consider myself a leader in the space. You know, I'm a person who wrote a book and does work surrounding this, but there are other people who have been doing the work longer and have lived in the bodies longer that do deserve that center position. So thank you for that. Other comments about how fat stigma, fat hatred, weight stigma shows up?
Straight size is not plus size, apparently.
Kia ora koutou
Oh,
katoa,
isn't that
tēnei-
funny too? Isn't that funny that they use that terminology? Because if we look at queer theory, right, straight people are considered oppressors, whereas anyone who's not straight is some varying level of oppressed, right? With of course queer and trans people being the most oppressed. Lesbian and gay men, I think, are like mid-level oppressed, and then we have straight people who are not oppressed at all. So isn't it funny that when it comes to weight, she's using the language straight-sized to describe herself as an ally? Pay attention to the language they use. Always pay attention to the language. The language is their tool. Their language is their weapon.
Te mihi kia koutou I ngā rangatira mō tēnei kōrero, kei te mihi hoki ki ngā mana whenua o tā tātou rohe hoki, me ngā tangata rāwaho hoki. Kia ora, I'm Ashley. I just wanted to acknowledge the different custodians
land
of
blessing.
the land in which we're all
Second
on,
land,
and the different disenfranchised.
It is a rare presentation where we not only have a land blessing at the beginning, we also have a land blessing halfway through. You know what it reminds me of? You guys know how like the Rocky movies in the 80s, like there would be some sort of montage midway through the movie where there'd be all sorts of like freeze frames. I love the freeze frames in the Rocky movies. They're the best. Like there'd be some sort of montage midway through. There'd be a freeze frame of Rocky doing something really powerful. And then they go back in and he'd go to the big fight. And then they'd have the end and the glorious victory at the end. And there'd be another freeze frame at the end. What she's just done is they did their land blessing at the beginning. It was like a 5-minute conversation for the land blessing, and she's gone in with land blessing too. It's like that freeze frame in the middle of the movie just to break things up.
Marginalized peoples today. So kia ora, I'm coming in from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experiences as a fat Maori woman working in this space, currently undertaking a PhD in Indigenous studies, and how it shows up for me.
A Maori woman. Elizabeth says, has anyone been to Victoria's Secret lately? They've changed the bodies of all the women in the windows of the store. However, inside the store, no plus at all. Talk about all show. Oh, isn't that funny? So they basically they've changed the women in the runway shows. They've changed the mannequins, but they aren't actually selling any plus size products. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
Me in my space, as someone who's socially assigned as Pākehā or European or white passing.
And by the way, I don't think there's a problem with clothing lines being more size inclusive. to be really honest with you. As someone like I'm not a skinny girl, right? Like I'm like on the bridge of like, you know, I'm like I can wear normal size clothes, but like it's nicer when you have access to larger sizes. It just is. I'm sorry. And I do actually appreciate how there's now like clothing brands are different. Like there's plus size clothes, but like honestly, they're usually like really effing ugly and cut horribly and made out of horrible fabric. And I really actually do like that a lot of designers have started designing clothes in a way that is just like more naturally size inclusive and actually like looks like it's like fitted. Like, you know, I do think that there are improvements that are necessary. Like people need clothes, regardless of what size they are. People need flipping clothes. And so I don't actually have a problem with places like even like Victoria's Secret appealing to that audience. They're a business. It just makes sense. The average size of a woman in the United States is like 14 or something like that. Like it makes sense to appeal to the market. That's how you stay in business. But when it's just a blatant virtue signal, like them having these plus size mannequins and then not actually selling anything in the store, that doesn't make sense.
It shows up for me in different ways. And there's this real, like Jill said, this thing about being the fat Black woman in Aotearoa, being the fat Maori woman is seen in multiple different ways, and you're experiencing these multiple systems of oppression that restrict your access. And it's your access to employment, your access to wellness, your access to evidence-based healthcare, not fat-based healthcare, you know? And so for me and how this shows up in my work, it's everywhere. It's in everything I do, moving through the world as a fat Maori woman, as a fat Maori child as well. So it's a lifelong journey. And I think one of the important things about it, and I'm sure we all know this, is that it's not just the fat hatred comments. If it was just the comments, then we wouldn't see our restriction of access. We wouldn't see less fat people, fat Black women, fat Indigenous women, whatever different identities we occupy. We wouldn't see the statistics that we see now and the ways in which that we do not have access to pretty much everything, you know? So yeah, it shows up everywhere, all the time.
Thank you for that.
All right, everyone. For those who have just tuned in, and I know I have people watching on a variety of different platform at this point, I just want to remind everyone that this is happy hour, so I don't condone or support what's going on in this panel. This is an opportunity for us to learn what the crazy woke people are saying, to make sure that we understand the arguments that they're making, so we can best fight back against them. Because if we don't know what arguments they're making, we can't fight back against them. If you haven't already, subscribe or like or whatever on whatever platform you're on. That would be great. I'm broadcasting on my second channel, Actively Unwoke on YouTube, because A, this show is always on Actively Unwoke, so this is actually nothing new. But B, also I have a strike on my first channel for right now. I will be back on my primary channel on Monday. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Odyssey. I'm also on Rockfin. Please make sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you're on, like it on whatever platform you're on, and regardless, please, please, please get into my Locals community. Locals is the best place on the internet. It's going to be my home base. You can join Locals for free. You don't have to pay. You can join for free and lurk. It's kb.locals.com. Information is in the description below. But if you do want to support my work, the very best way to do it is to become a monthly supporter on Locals for $5 a month, or an annual supporter at $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You get access to all sorts of exclusives and perks and things like that. And it's just the best place on the internet, best people on the internet. So make sure you're in my Locals. And if not, just subscribe and like on whatever platform you're on. And that be that. All right, let's dig back in. Share audio. Here we go.
It's very easy for us to believe that this is either cultural or aesthetic or about health, when it's all of those things at once. We can understand how aesthetics impacts whether or not people are the front runners for positions at various organizations. So jobs are impacted, housing can be impacted, health outcomes are impacted, mostly by the stigmatization. There are all of these different ways in which people's health outcomes, life outcomes, are disrupted by the simple hatred of their appearance. And I think it's so important that we have the opportunity to speak with Indigenous scholars such as yourself because in a lot of the conversations that we have about race, what we are often talking about is anti-Blackness, which is so important, but it's easy to forget that BI, Black and Indigenous people in particular, have a very clear connection when it pertains to settler colonialism in North America, right? Because first, the indigenous population had to be decimated, and then they had to bring over the slaves. And so without both of those components, white supremacy would not be what it is. So it's so important to consider how these particular forms of oppression are also impacting indigenous communities. And with that, I think we'll move on to our question specifically for BIPOC panelists, which is that fat shaming and weight stigma do not exist in a vacuum. They're closely interrelated with racism, ableism, which we haven't talked about much yet, ageism, gender, sexual orientation, class, and other systems of oppression. And so for those on the panel who identify—
Pop quiz for the chat. What is it called when people have multiple oppressed traits about them? What is she describing when she says that it's not just about people being fat, it's about racism and ableism and misogyny and all of these other things? What is the term for that in the chat? You guys already know this. We've already talked about it. It's just a pop quiz. Intersectionality. Yes. Emily L has it right. It's intersectionality. Emily wins absolutely nothing except our praise and admiration.
Identify as BIPOC. Could you speak further about your understanding of some of these links so that our audience can better understand the connections between these topics? Oh, Jill, please. Dr. Jill Andrew.
Well, just Jill is fine. I wanted to speak particularly to the adultification of Black bodies and also the criminalization of Black bodies.
The criminalization of Black
race
bodies.
And size
really?
And gender, you know? As an educator, I had seen time and time again where Black and racialized, you know, students would be disproportionately expelled or suspended, you know, for the same behavior that non-BIPOC, or if I may simply say white students were not being punished for. And at a closer analysis, you'd also see that there'd be size discrimination. You know, the larger girl that gets into the fight, she must have been the one who started it. Or it's not possible for this boy to be bullied because he's so tall and he's so—
Well, okay, so let me just play this out for a second. The larger girl, like if she has self-esteem issues from being the larger girl and she hasn't worked on those issues and she doesn't have people helping her on those issues, yeah, she probably actually will be more likely to start fights. So our behavior can't be like people are responsible for their own behavior. You can be a larger girl and not start fights. Okay? Or you can be a larger girl and through your actions and your behaviors, you start a fight with someone. That has nothing to do with your size, and the fact that you got blamed on it had nothing to do with your size, except for the fact that, you know, your weight probably has contributed to self-esteem issues that you haven't worked on, and it makes you more angry and it makes you more prone to maybe accidentally having an outburst or something else. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that the larger girl did actually start the fight. Just because she was a larger girl doesn't mean she didn't start the fight.
So big and he looks like a man, you know? So there's a level of adultification of Black children, I think, that can also be linked to not only racism, but to also size discrimination, fat phobia specifically, or fat hatred, as I have said. Also, if we look at the criminalization of Black bodies as well, I would argue, my apologies, I've got to keep my phones on, but I would argue that there is also a disproportionate criminalization of Black and brown bodies, you know, and the larger
based
you
on
are,
what data?
The bigger you are, the more of a menacing force.
Based on what data?
Like, the more the assumption that you require deadly force potentially to subdue you, right? And I think that this is something that we have to talk more of. You know, with regards to not only racism and not only anti-Indigenous racism, but again, how size discrimination, how body-based harassment plays into, you know, which children are suspended, which ones are expelled, you know, which person's behavior is given a second chance, which one is not, who is met with more lethal force, you know? I think about even just how our bodies are touched without our consent. in public spaces. You know, I think about.
Okay. Elizabeth says, can you explain to me as a psychologist how being overweight affects housing? It doesn't directly. It doesn't. I mean, you could make the roundabout argument that being overweight makes you less inclined to want to leave the house. You have lower self-esteem, more prone to depression. Therefore, if you're not leaving the house, in olden days anyway, you probably weren't going to get a job. You probably weren't going anywhere. And if you don't have money coming in to pay the bills, that means you're probably going to have a harder time with housing. But there's no direct link that I'm aware of between your size and your ability to pay rent or a mortgage. I don't know of any data to support this.
Taking the bus or being, you know, in a crowded area, and someone, often a male identifying person, or at least visibly appearing male to myself, you know, bumping into me, or the times that I've been called a fat bitch, you know, all of these things happening in public spaces, again, because Blackness and fatness, you know, first of all, they're seen as othered identities, but they're also seen as identities that are radical, you know, that can't be contained. And therefore, in a white supremacist world that's built on containing not only our voices, our intellectual thoughts, but also our physicality, our bodies, you know, we have to do everything we can to resist that, you know? So whether there's change in policies, you know, many years ago, I had tried to get size and weight discrimination included into the Ontario Human Rights Code, you know, as categories of discrimination, you know, along with intersecting other categories of discrimination.
They probably did that in Canada too. Canada's crazy.
That's something I still remember and still hope to be able to take up in this new role in politics, in political life, but also still in academia. So lots to talk about, so little time.
Yeah, come through with the fire, Dr. Jill Andrew. There's so much there for us to build on. And I really want to speak to the question of sizeism, which is sort of doubly signified in your comments. It's not just about weight, but also about height. And when we think about the combination of weight and height, we can see how, for example, when we think about instances of police brutality, Eric Garner and Michael Brown in the United States, their murderers, more accurately, were very clear in that they were, quote unquote, terrified of these big Black men.
Oh,
right? And it was definitely not just about their height, but also about their weight. It was the two things that allowed the police officers to believe that they were justified in committing murder simply on the basis of their size. And I would also add their skin color, right? Because these were two dark-skinned Black men.
Wow.
So thinking about how height and weight factor into these kinds of biases.
I'm clipping the shit out of that. I'll tell you what, I'm clipping the shit out of it.
Oh yes, and Ashman, please.
Dr. Jill Andrew, Dr. Strings, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I think quite vividly about Mike Brown, Walter Scott, Eric Garner, Alton Sterling, who, if you're not a fat person, you are a large person. And then Dr. Jill Andrew, I believe you said this, like it suddenly is a justification of deadly force. When I hear about Eric Garner specifically, I think back to the coroner's report, which finally happened many years later after public outcry. You know, what resulted in his, well, honestly, execution. And they smugly said, the lawyers defending his murderer smugly said, he was so fat, he was going to die anyway. It wasn't the chokehold. It wasn't an illegal chokehold. It wasn't the fact that multiple cops were called to arrest a person.
Do you see Dr. Jill? Do you see her reaction?
This happens.
Hang on. Watch her reaction. And I'm not sure I even buy what he's saying is truthful, but watch Dr. Jill's reaction to what he's saying if you didn't see it. Hang on.
Two things that allowed.
No.
And then Dr. Jill Andrew, I believe you said this, like it suddenly is a justification of deadly force.
Is he wearing nail polish?
When I hear about Eric Garner specifically.
Hang on.
Then Dr. Jill Andrew, I believe you said this, like it suddenly.
He's wearing purple nail polish. Do you guys see this? He's wearing purple nail polish. I mean, to each their own, but like that's a little weird.
Is a justification of deadly force. When I hear about Eric
Watch
Garner
Dr. Jill. Watch
specifically,
her.
I think back
Watch
to
her.
the coroner's report, which finally happened many years later after public outcry. You know, what resulted in his, well, honestly, execution. And they smugly said, the lawyers defending his murderer smugly said, he was so fat, he was going to die anyway. It wasn't the chokehold. It wasn't an illegal chokehold. It wasn't the fact that multiple cops were called to arrest a person selling Lucy's. And this happens time and time again. And it's one of those details about fat hatred that we lose sight of when we think about the comments, when we make it about dating, when we make it about, again, things that are important as humans living in the world, but it's not the full scope of the picture. And there's actively a campaign to make us not think about that, to make us think there was some harm. And the names are endless. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, especially the reminder that the names are endless.
Ooh, we have our
So
original
you
interpreter
brought up
back.
two
I like her
additional,
better.
Walter Scott, right? You know, it's just sort of
Which do you guys like? Which interpreter do you like better? Do you like this one or do you like the blonde? I like this one better. She's more animated.
like all of these other people. We might even add, honestly, like Breonna Taylor. We talked a lot about the Black men in this instance, which is very important, but we have to also keep in mind that whenever we're talking about the fear of fat bodies, we're also mentioning women as well.
Oh, of course, of course. Intersectionality. Emily L says, this is just physics. Everything has mass, bigger bodies have stronger pull of gravity. Granted, very small, but impact of more mass is science, not hatred. They don't believe in science, Emily. They don't believe in science. Welcome, Alaruni. Alaruni made it. You're in for an amazing 50 minutes of this panel that's left.
Historically, centrally, it's been Black women who have been stigmatized. Any other comments about this particular question? I'd like to turn to Dr. Jill Andrew in particular, which is with the particular question of, as the MPP for Toronto and St. Paul's, and the co-founder of the Body Confidence Canada, can you speak a bit further about the work of the organization and how it pushes back against fat shaming and weight stigma?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Strings. So Body Confidence Canada was sort of born out of me and my partner Aisha's own experiences of misogynoir, tempered with.
I know. Alex says, how did this end up being all about race anyways? It's always all about race. It always comes back to that. I specifically wanted a break from critical race theory, and what did we get? Critical race theory plus fat studies.
Good old fat hatred in public spaces. And what we have attempted to do with Body Confidence Canada is to raise awareness, quite frankly, about size stigma, fat stigma, height stigma. We've raised awareness with regards to 2S LGBTQ embodiment and those who push back against stereotypical binary gender expression and identity. And we've done that through various events. Like the Body Confidence Canada Awards, where actually we had celebrated Louise Green and who had authored Big Girl Fit, right? And Fitness for Everyone, for instance. What was I sort of lost my train of thought. Sorry about that for a second. Yes. So one of the things we were really proud of was Body Confidence Awareness Week, which we were able to get passed through the Toronto District School Board, courtesy of support from trustees, and also...
so Mr. Green says these people are pro-heart disease. That would be an interesting little meme campaign, wouldn't it? To make a whole bunch of memes of like fat activists that like with some sort of like border or framing or something that was like pro-heart disease. That'd be interesting.
The Winnipeg School Board as well, courtesy of a trustee there as well too. And what that work allowed us to do is to engage schools and have schools engage themselves in conversations around body-based discrimination, size discrimination, racism, shadeism, you know, and the various cousins, you know, that wrap themselves around fat hatred. And some people have asked, oh, why call it Body Confidence Canada? You know, what's this Body Confidence Awareness Week thing? You know, why not just call it Fat Hatred Awareness Week, you know, or Anti-Black Racism Awareness Week, right? The reality is sometimes you have to nuance the words to enter the door, right? And when you get through the door, you can have that conversation that would never have gotten you through the door to begin with. So when we are doing a workshop on body confidence, for instance, you know, it sounds very fashion and very, you know, cosmopolitan, and nothing's wrong about fashion, because I mean, we could talk for hours about the politics of style and the politics of clothing and the symbolic messages that our clothes have and how they resist and uphold, you know, ideals of good body, bad body, whatnot. But what was particularly of interest here was people didn't want to have conversations on shadeism and colorism. They didn't feel comfortable having conversations around anti-Black racism
and colorism.
You know, they didn't want to have those deep conversations.
Okay.
But if you came in with body confidence, something that was more palatable, something that allowed you to have those conversations, you know, in a more you know, light way.
So she's essentially saying that what she is saying is she's essentially using the fat positivity movement in order to have the conversations she really wants to have, which are about race. So so what she's saying is people find conversations about body positivity to be more palatable, so she uses that and takes advantage of it to swoop in and actually have a conversation about racism, which they don't want to have conversations about.
Then all of a sudden you can peel the onion and you can get to the heavier pieces. I didn't put that forth really articulately, but you get the idea. You know, so what we've done is we've used Body Confidence Canada as a tool for having deeper conversations about fat hatred, about race, about gender, about anti-Blackness, et cetera, et cetera. And especially, I just want to say this before I wrap, you know, with COVID-19, you know, right now with COVID-19,
virtue signal,
and this notion of,
I'm gonna add a new bingo square that's gonna be like, it's gonna be like a special bingo square that I call out when like they virtue signal on something. And so she's like, and we have to talk about COVID-19 because they're virtue signaling, because like, you know, has nothing to do with, well, actually, I mean, ironically, talking about COVID-19 does have to do with this topic, doesn't it? Because, you know, you're more like some would say that you are more likely to suffer from COVID-19 if you are overweight. Others might dispute that fact. You should check with the CDC and see what they say about that fact, because I'm only allowed to talk about the CDC on YouTube. That's the only place I'm allowed to talk about. I am not allowed to give any sort of remote opinion about anything else other than what the CDC says. So check with the CDC. But some people think that if you are overweight, that might make it harder for you if you happen to catch COVID. Other people might dispute that. Check with the CDC.
You know, being healthy, you know, taking care of yourself, you know, and the COVID-15. Oh, no. Who wants to get the COVID-15, right?
The fuck is the COVID-15?
Even during a pandemic, you know, fat hatred doesn't take a break. Like even during a pandemic, fat hatred doesn't take a break.
Wow.
And we've seen in other parts of the world, you know, where professionals have made public statements.
Can someone please find her Twitter? I want to see her Twitter, so I'll find it after the thing, but like, can someone please find me her Twitter? Can someone whose name starts with K please find me her Twitter? Thank you.
With regards to fat bodies, you know, being, you know, comorbidity bodies that may not really be good bodies to have access to ventilators, for instance. You know, so these are concerns. It's a very deep and tragic moment when we live in a world where, you know, white experts, you know, thin experts, heteronormative experts, able-bodied experts are the majority at the table making decisions about everyone else at the periphery of those tables. That is dangerous, and that is why we really have to, recenter and take back this notion of marginalization, because nothing happens unless we are recentering the voices of those who have been made marginalized. People are not marginalized, made marginalized.
Hang on. This is why Kieran is the best. All right. Who wants to take a quick break and go look at her Twitter? Type Y if you want me to take a quick break and go look at her Twitter. Type N if you would like to continue with the presentation. Who wants to take a quick break and we can stop and look at her Twitter? Y if you agree, and if you're like, no, Carlin, I don't want to look at her Twitter. I just want to keep going. It's up to you guys. Everyone's like, why? Okay. It's a play on the freshman 15. It is, isn't it? All right. So we decided her Twitter was what? It is Jill's last word. So let me log in. Okay. Hang on. Okay. I have way too many windows open. Jill's last word. She's verified. F her. Twitter rejected my verification request the other day. I was like, man, truth be told, I actually never expect to be verified on Twitter, but I submit the request anyway, just for giggles. But I definitely deserve to be verified more than this woman. All right, let's see what her Twitter says. She's masking. There's that. Liberals voted against banning conversion therapy in 2018. NDP bill also had the majority and just didn't do it. Liberals denied NDP. Okay, I don't know what any of this means. This might be substantially less entertaining than possibly could be. Disability Twitter, disability arts. Are you seeking funds for an art exhibition or theatrical work? Maybe Tangled Art plus disability can help. We're having an info session on our thing so art grants for people with disabilities. Art grants for people with disabilities. Huh. Isn't that interesting? Something about autonomy. Oh, she's talking about eye health. So sadly, there's nothing really entertaining here. But now we know, and you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna tag her in some things when we clip these clips later. I'm just saying. All right, let's get back to it. It was a fun little detour. Didn't pay off this time, but that doesn't mean it won't next time.
By broken systems.
Thank you. I think your comments were incredibly eloquent. And I really appreciated what you were saying at the outset about this whole question of the language that you use to get people in the door, right? So I'm thinking about this is a form of subterfuge. People expect something sort of light and easy. And then once they're in there, you're like, okay, here's what anti-Blackness is like. Here's what fat phobia is like. Here's what it means when you hate fat people. Like all of these things that they may not have shown up for in the beginning.
How are they defining?
In the room, you can take them deeper than they thought they were.
I really have to question how they're defining the term hate. Like they like to say you hate this, you hate that. What does it actually mean in their world too? Oh shit. No. What the hell?
Hello.
At the periphery of those tables.
Where was I?
Thank you for being on with us. Your comments have been phenomenal.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, my point was like they're not defining the term hate, but now I don't know where I left off in this presentation, and I don't know what button I hit. So because I wasn't signed in, whatever. We're gonna work it out.
Are thinking about becoming pregnant. You're told to.
speak to the issue of weight bias and how it intersects with medical growth.
Sin got a bingo. Congratulations, Sin.
Once
Way to
again, I hear
go.
terms like weight bias, and what comes to mind.
And now, of course, because Sin has a bingo, we're working on Blackout Bingo. Blackout Bingo is the next goal. Everyone congratulate Sin for the first bingo of the day.
Is white supremacy, pure and simple. You are told to lose weight if you are thinking about becoming pregnant. You are told to lose weight if you want to transition. You are told to lose weight if an arbitrary amount of weight, might I add, if you have the allergies. You are told to lose weight if you broke a bone. I don't blame fat people whatsoever.
I was at 3640. You guys are the best.
For being reluctant to
So I was
visit,
pretty close. I was pretty
a
close.
healthcare provider. You are met with such condescension. You are met with open hostility. You are told you do not know your body as well as I. This person who's often straight-sized, a person who may be a different ethnicity than you, who's probably a normative body, who comes from a very specific
normative body. Ella Rooney, thank you for the support. The CXDXCX has has of today lost all credibility. I'm reading a super chat, YouTube. Some people believe the CXDXCX has a lot of credibility, and we should probably listen to those people if you don't want to get a stupid strike on your channel, the YouTube. But the data from the org on comorbidities has obesity at number 1, anxiety at number 2, and diabetes at number 3. I can post in your locals the analyst I watched. Well, yes, Alaruni, that would be amazing if you could post it in my locals, because of course I cannot talk on YouTube about how the CDC data regarding comorbidities. I can't talk about it because then I get a strike on my channel. So if you do want to post it in my locals, that would be amazing. And people can head over to kb.locals.com after the stream and check out what that data has to say. Of course, you're going to be able to access that data for free if you just join the community, but you can also support the work I'm doing and all that good stuff, kb.locals.com, which is where we can have actual conversations on the internet and not have to be all cryptic. But of course, please check with the CDC if you want to for all relevant information around all of the things. And Alan Rooney, you're cool, man. You're cool. We worked our way through it. We're good. But in locals, we get to tell the truth and have real conversations and not have to pander to any YouTube bullshit censorship.
Positioning class. They are telling you over and over again, your body is an imposition. And that's if you even have access to healthcare. You know, if you think about Canada's Indigenous populations and where the closest hospital is and what sort of facilities they have, how many ventilators do they have? And it's fascinating because we pathologize, I mean, it's fascinating in a very dark and absurd way, but we pathologize not just fatness, but we pathologize the conditions, the practices that produce fatness too. And I do believe that what fat people experience in the medical industrial complex, especially super fat people identify as super fat or people identify as infini-fat or disabled fat people, is very much a shadow of what?
Did he say infini-fat?
Indigenous women.
Did he say infini-fat? People identify, like, what did he say?
We pathologize, I mean, it's fascinating in a very dark and absurd way, but we pathologize not just fatness, but we pathologize the conditions, the practices that produce fatness too. And I do believe that what fat people experience in the medical industrial complex, especially super fat people identify as super fat or people identify as infini-fat or disabled fat people.
Infini-fat, what the hell is infini-fat?
What Black women and Indigenous women feel all the time and have historically felt. It is the pathologization of Indigenous knowledge. It's the pathologization of Black cuisine, of cultural practices, of ways of being. And I really believe that's part of a larger campaign of eugenics. It's a campaign where by attrition, by gatekeeping,
Hang on. I have to listen to this again. I'm sorry.
Black women and Indigenous women feel all the time and have historically felt. It is the pathologization of Indigenous knowledge. It's the pathologization of Black cuisine, of cultural practices, of ways of being. And I really believe that's
he just said, okay, we're going to break this down. The pathologization of Black cuisine and of Indigenous knowledge. They're pathologizing this of Black cuisine and Indigenous knowledge. Let's keep going.
A larger campaign of eugenics.
They're pathologizing Black cuisine and Indigenous knowledge for the larger campaign of eugenics. Okay.
A campaign where by attrition, by gatekeeping, by producing ableism, we get rid of populations we think are not valuable to us. We get rid of people who don't embody the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant ideal of the elite. People.
This is pure projection right now with what he wants to do. He is pure mother effing projection right now. Pure projection.
Who deserve to have access to resources, to have the stewardship of this planet. But I think it's interesting to think about what this produces ultimately. And I forget who said it earlier, and so I apologize in advance, but this idea of blame I find so compelling, because what this ultimately does is produce scapegoats. So we're in the middle of COVID-19, this horrifying pandemic. And that got me thinking about how have we approached pandemics in the past? And we've had our fair share of them in the past. So I went looking to studies of H1N1. And there was this alarming look at the global response to H1N1. Now, of course, it is a different sort of virus. It is a different respiratory condition compared to COVID-19, but I think the response, the mechanisms of them are quite similar. And what they found was, the typical fat people are predisposed to H1N1. They're dying in greater numbers. The words comorbidities, things like that always pop up. But what this study did was it looked at.
He's saying that talking about comorbidities is racist. That's what he's saying. Talking about comorbidities is racist.
Who received early antiviral treatment between straight-sized patients, fat patients. And if they controlled for who received those early antiviral treatments, the gulf between straight-sized people living and fat people dying vanished, collapsed. So the complication wasn't fatness. The complication was a healthcare provider looking at a fat patient and saying, I'm going to deny you early antiviral treatment. And then looking at a straight patient saying, buddy, I'm going to top you off. That is based on a series of biases, is based on a worldview, a perspective that is openly hostile to Black and Indigenous bodies, that is openly hostile to anything that doesn't fit the container of normativity. And it also launders all sorts of horrible, violent, I truly believe, ideologies. So we have white supremacy over here. I think it also launders austerity. I mean, let's look at the UK. I think it's safe to say that their response to COVID-19 was abysmal. They used baffling concepts like herd immunity, like austerity, like blaming it on the individual instead of providing a proper social response that met the needs of their populations. They said, it'll solve itself. The economy has to continue. And then what happened? Boris Johnson, he got COVID. And of course, I'm sure he has amazing access to all sorts of private healthcare providers. He recovered. What did he say after he recovered? Now I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, you know what, I could stand to lose a few pounds. And overnight, when the conversation was, this government is not doing enough, this government is imposing austerity, this government is making decisions like herd immunity, the conversation became fat people. Fat people are the drain to our resources.
Okay, I just want to point something out here. I want to point, and he's about to say something crazy, and I promise we're going to get back to it in a second. But I just want to point out that the reason that these people have any power or any influence at all is because they are expressing themselves, is because they are speaking. They are putting their ideas out into the world. And the problem that we are facing with these crazy people running the show and setting the agenda and controlling everything is because they are the ones expressing themselves. It's not that they have the best ideas, because they don't. Their ideas are batshit insane, but they are the ones expressing themselves, and that's what gives them power. Every single time people cling onto this idea of the silent majority, and they're saying, I'm just going to be silent. I'm just going to show up and vote. I can't possibly speak out. Oh my God, I could lose my job. I could like piss off the parents at my kid's school. Every single time that people are making the choice to stay silent, they are ceding their power to people like this. Every single time. The only reason that these people have any power and any influence at all is because they are speaking up in a way that is completely unopposed by sane, rational people. And that is why they are running the table and we continue to lose. People have got to start speaking up against this. There are some people doing it. There are not enough people doing it. Everyone has a personal responsibility. And if you are scared about speaking up and looking stupid, just think about the crazy shit that has come out of some of these people's mouths in the course of this singular conversation.
People is why we as a nation can't control COVID-19. It allowed the floodgates to open for bigotry theater, essentially. I mean, just last night, I was checking Twitter and I came across this headline from the Times, quote unquote, obese Britons putting at risk hopes of widespread vaccine protection. I think that's more of a them problem, not a me problem. I think your vaccine's a bit of a dud. I think you haven't tested this vaccine on fat people. I think you are using this as a scapegoat, using fat people as a scapegoat to sort of wave away the reality that this vaccine might not work, or it won't be distributed properly, or it's just untested. Who cares? It's fat people's problems. So we have biases rooted in white supremacy.
Oh,
we have
you know, do you guys, okay, pop quiz. Why is he talking about the vaccine not working? I'm not saying the vaccine doesn't work, reference the CDC. I'm not saying that at all. I'm repeating what the guy is saying. Why is he saying the vaccine doesn't work? Pop quiz. Why is he saying that? And as always, you should reference the CDC. Some people think the vaccine worked very, very well. And you should work with your doctor to make your own medical decisions. Why is he saying that? The clue's right on the screen, guys. I like, why is he bad-mouthing the vaccine? There's a really clear reason for this. Why is he bad-mouthing the vaccine? Graphically, Alex, you're on the way there. You're on the way. That is the first part of this. Yep, graphically, Alex says because it was Trump's. But like, go one step farther. Why is he allowed to say this on YouTube? Think about the timing of this presentation. That's your clue. Why is he allowed to say this on YouTube? It was before the election. This presentation was on September 28th, 2020. It was before the election. That's why he's saying it.
Scapegoating to effectively launder austerity. And finally, I think all this comes together because it launders something else: profit. This is the pathologization of fatness is a massive industry, and that's why I keep calling this the medical industrial complex. Recently, the Canadian Medical Association published new guidelines for treating quote unquote obese patients, more holistic. They're about getting rid of weight stigma. They're about approaching fat patients with empathy, treating it as a chronic illness. Now, set aside, I mean, I disagree with the notion that fatness in and of itself.
You know what we should do? We should just start today making a timeline of what positions the left holds. Like, just start documenting that somewhere. Like these are positions the left holds based on these articles in mainstream publications, and just start tracking it. Here are the positions that the left holds on COVID, on vaccines. Here are the positions the left holds on Afghanistan. And we can do this for the right too. I mean, probably what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But someone, if they were really smart, would set up just a simple tracker of here are the positions that the left holds on these issues so we can track it over time. You could probably go back and do it. You could go back and do it well, but it would be interesting to do it in real time so you can actually see, we can actually see and track in real time when their positions are changing. That would be an interesting thing. If only someone could write an AI thing to be able to do that for us, that'd be really great.
Should be considered a chronic illness. Not that it really matters if you're chronically ill. You should still have dignity, access to healthcare. But what was remarkable about the new guidelines, and they're actually publicly available, so I went looking for them. I went looking for the document to just out of curiosity. And then I stumbled onto, I'm bringing it up on my phone right now. I stumbled onto the section called competing interests. That section usually in any sort of paper lists the competing interests of everyone who contributed to the document. So if you took money about something you're doing research on, this is where you announce it. Now, I don't know how well this will show, but let's try it anyway. So right here is where the competing interests, can you even see that? Probably not. It keeps going. I'm scrolling, I'm scrolling, I'm still scrolling. Oh my God, I am scrolling still.
Devastating.
And this is the largest of its kind. And I don't want to take up too much time, any more time than I have already. But I just like to read very briefly where the money is coming from, as listed by themselves under competing interests. Contributors to the guidelines received speaker fees, consultation fees, advisory board fees, research grants, peer-reviewed grants, honoraria, speaker honoraria, unrestricted educational grants, stock options, non-financial support from the likes of Loblaws, PepsiCo, Kellogg's Canada, Barilla, Unilever, Unico Primo, the California Walnut Commission, the Almond Board of California, Nestle, the International Carbohydrate Quality Consortium. Many of the contributors actually run weight management clinics. And this might be my favorite of all the competing interests listed. One of the contributors also reports selling OptiFast meal replacements through a weight management center. How is that in any way academic rigor? None of this was actually reported when these guidelines came out. Why should I trust people who profit off of pathologizing fatness, who take vacations off of pathologizing fatness, who can pre-order a PlayStation 5 by pathologizing fatness? Why should I trust them when it comes to treating fat people holistically?
What the hell does ordering a PlayStation 5 have to do with being fat? I'm so confused about where he's gone on this. I'm so confused.
To ending weight stigma. You do not pay foxes to study hen houses.
Precisely.
But this is how we treat the concept of weight bias. It's really just a production of scapegoats. So we can launder, again, white supremacy, austerity, and massive, massive profits. And the most absurd thing is ultimately, I And I think many of us actually share a common goal with this massive medical industrial complex. None of us want to see fat people go away.
Fat people have a right to exist.
We have a right to exist without having our value extracted.
Exactly. Yeah. And thank you so much for your beautiful commentary. I appreciated the ways in which you artfully wove questions about pathologization of Black and Indigenous peoples with this whole question of the promotion of austerity, right? The sort of morality surrounding how a body should or shouldn't look. And then the question of, obviously, money, which rules so much of what happens within our economies in the United States and in Canada, right? And so I wanted to recap the many wonderful things you said, but thank you so much for that. I think I'm going to turn now to Maya and talk about how your work, which centers queer Black feminist thoughts and then also police and prison abolition, how do you think that this connects with questions of fat liberation and the Black radical tradition?
Yeah, I think that all of those things are inherently connected. I could first speak to prison and police abolition, the ways it connects to fat liberation. Today, a few hours ago, we saw that only one out of the three police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor, fat Black woman, was indicted. For me, as someone who hopes to see a world without police in prisons, it felt very much so like a reminder that the criminal legal system is not broken, but inherently designed to be rooted in anti-Blackness, misogyny, war, fat phobia, transphobia, all these other systems of oppression, and that we can't look to a white settler colonial state for any sort of justice or accountability. I think that fat people, particularly Black and Indigenous fat people, have a large stake in looking towards a world without police in prisons, because a world in which that exists is a world where fatness isn't criminalized. And we spoke about that briefly before, the ways in which fatness is used as a justification for the harm and violence committed against fat people. But I want to also name and uplift that it's not just cis women and cis men, but like Black trans folks, Black non-binary folks, Indigenous folks, people of all marginalized genders experience this harm. And I really think about Kayla Moore, who was a disabled trans Black woman, a super fat woman.
Disabled trans,
based
super
in the Bay Area
Black
in
woman.
California. And she was murdered by Berkeley police. And they actually said, you know, she was fat. It wasn't the police officers who suffocated her. It was her fatness. That's why she died. And so to me, I think it's really important to name that folks who are rooted and interested in organizing towards fat liberation,
Oh,
police in prison, abolition.
My God. I just want to rewind. I want to rewind. We need to experience this again. I'm sorry. Oh shit, God damn it.
Not just cis women and cis men, but like Black trans folks, Black non-binary folks, Indigenous folks, people of all marginalized genders.
Wait. I wanna start at the beginning of this soliloquy, and I want us to keep track of how many woke buzzwords she uses in the course of this soliloquy. Everyone keep track of how many woke buzzwords. We're gonna rewind to the beginning of when she starts. Thereabouts.
Fat liberation.
Okay, fat liberation.
Obviously, money.
Okay. Everyone keep track.
So much of what happens
buzzwords
within our economies in the United States and in Canada, right? And so I wanted to recap the many wonderful things you said, but thank you so much for that. I think I'm going to turn now to Maya and talk about
type in the buzzwords as you find them.
Your work
for the fast typers.
Queer Black feminist thoughts, and then also police and prison abolition. How do you think that this connects with questions of fat liberation and the Black radical tradition?
Yeah, I think that all of those things are inherently connected. I could first speak to prison and police abolition, the ways it connects to fat liberation.
Fat liberation,
today,
police abolition.
A few hours ago, we saw that only one out of the three police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor, fat Black woman, was indicted.
Fat Black woman.
For me, as someone who hopes to see a world without police in prisons, it felt very much so like a reminder
virtue signal.
that the criminal legal system is not broken, but inherently designed to be rooted in anti-Blackness,
misogyny,
war,
fatphobia,
all these other
transphobia,
systems of
11.
oppression, and that we can't look to a white settler colonial state for any
Colonialism,
sort of justice or accountability.
Accountability.
I think that fat people, particularly Black and Indigenous fat people, have a large stake in looking towards a world without police and prisons, because a world in which that exists is a world where fatness isn't criminalized. And we spoke about that briefly before, the ways in which fatness is used as a justification for the harm and violence committed against
fat people.
But I want to also name and uplift that it's not just cis women and cis men, but like
cis
Black,
women,
trans
white men,
folks, Black non-binary
trans
folks,
women, white,
Indigenous folks, people of all marginalized genders experience this harm.
Wait. Something is going wrong on my screen, and I don't know. Hang on. Sorry, guys. I'm getting like an echo, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on my screen. Or my sound. Where? Oh, wait. I know. I found it. Okay. Found it. I accidentally turned the volume on one of the places I'm... Okay. We're at like 25 or some odd buzzwords. Let's keep going.
And I really think about Kayla Moore, who was a disabled trans Black woman,
trans Black woman,
who was based in the Bay Area in California. And she was murdered by Berkeley police. And they actually said, you know, she was fat. It wasn't the police officers who suffocated her. It was her fatness. That's why she died.
Oh my God.
And so to me, I think it's really important to name that folks who are rooted and interested in organizing towards fat liberation and police and prison, abolitionists, have so much to build in terms of a coalition with one another, because fat phobia is an abolitionist issue. And I think the prison industrial complex and ending it is fundamentally a fat liberation issue. As we see the ways in which Black and Indigenous and brown folks are intensely marginalized with really serious consequences by the state.
There were like 40 virtue signaling buzzwords in that soliloquy. How many did you guys get? Is anyone close to a blackout bingo? Because I feel like people are getting like really close to, like, there were like 40 virtue signaling buzzwords in that single soliloquy. I'm going to clip the shit out of this. Oh my God. I already know what I'm doing for the rest of the night. I'm just clipping this presentation. This presentation is awesome.
I also think that when I talk about like the queer Black feminist tradition, I'm really rooted in Audre Lorde and the Combahee River Collective. I think often
still going.
Identity politics have been seen now as something that we shouldn't look to. I think often they're misinterpreted. I think that they are much more radical in terms of the ways in which the queer, like Black feminists who originally developed these ideas intended their use. Primarily not as like diversity token, like a box to check, but rather that when we center the most marginalized,
marginalized
folks can articulate the breadth and the depth of an issue and develop the most sophisticated solutions to those.
I want to see a chat full of salad.
I think it's an
organizing This is word tactic. Salad if I've ever heard it.
That absolutely influences my work and my organizing. I think that Black women, specifically fat Black women.
Metastep says the prison industrial complex is a thing. Yes, it is, but that's not how she's using it. She's using it as a virtue signal. So we have to go with like her definition.
Black queer folks, Black trans folks, Black non-binary folks have historically been the vanguard of radical Black movement in the United States, but I think also globally.
Hey, Patrice.
And so I emphasize
Patrice,
that, like,
thank you for your defense
Black
last night in
people,
Adam's stream.
Black, queer and trans people can get free. That means that the rest of us can get free as well. So I think that those are just some of the ways in which abolition, queer Black feminism, and
queer Black feminism, liberation, interconnected.
You know, we should all work together.
That was 50 or that was like 60.
I can
60
feel how
minimally.
Your statements really speak to the history of queer liberation in the United States. I mean, many people imagine that queer liberation was a lot of gay white men.
All right, guys, I'm ready for my second beer, and I think I'm going to go for the big guns, the Nitro Coconut Truffle Imperial Stout. That it doesn't have ale with sea salt, dark chocolate, and natural chocolate and coconut flavors. Hang on, it's in a can, but it's a Nitro. wonder if you guys can hear when I open. You guys hear that? The nitro goes off. Whoop. Happy Friday, everyone. Cheers, cheers, cheers. If you are in a region where you can get Southern Tier beer, I highly recommend it. Pumpkin. All Southern Tier beer is good. It is all. I have yet to have a beer from Southern Tier that I have not enjoyed. Yeah, that's a coconut stout. Stouts are my favorite. Stouts are my favorite beer. I do not like IPAs. I like stouts because like they're nice and dark and they have a lot of flavor. And like I mean I like all kinds of stouts, but I really like coconut stouts. I really like coffee stouts. It's good stuff. And it smells like coconut. It's so delicious. All right, let's keep going.
And fighting for their rights to get married. It's like, well, that's what it may have become by the 21st century, for example, when we were moving towards more homonormativity. But it started with a lot of queer and trans, Black and brown folks who were willing to stand up and fight police often in order to be recognized as human beings and to live their lives with dignity and purpose. And a lot of these people, like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, were completely erased from the historical record and all the critical work that they did. And so it's so important for us to recognize that a lot of what ends up happening in a lot of liberatory movements, unfortunately, it's the most privileged people who end up getting somewhere, you know, and unfortunately in Black liberation movements, that often means cishet men. In women's movement, a lot of times it's meant white women. But if we all want to get free, we need to center those individuals who are least privileged, not those who are most privileged. So thank you so much for reminding us of that. And now we'll move on to Ashley. And Ashley, I wanted to ask you, as soon as I find my question, about your doctoral research, which focuses on how Indigenous women enact body sovereignty as a form of resistance as they navigate multiple layered forms of oppression. Can you explain what is meant by body sovereignty and how it intersects with systems of oppression in the context of New Zealand Indigenous Maori culture?
If you are watching on Odyssey right now, there is a trolley troll in the chat that I'm trying to deal with, but it's obviously a bot. And it's going to continue to disrupt the chat. And Odyssey should probably really do something about this because, you know, this isn't going to create a great experience on Odyssey. But to be really honest with you, I'm not going to spend all day blocking this asshole because he's just coming in with new accounts and ruining the chat for everyone. And this is a problem for Odyssey to deal with. So I apologize for everyone watching on Odyssey. Ain't nothing I can do about it, man. Sorry, guys.
Culture.
Yeah, thank you. So my doctoral research is exploring body sovereignty for fat Indigenous women and what that looks like within the racist, sexist, fat hatred systems that we live in. And so when I'm talking about body sovereignty, I've always kind of had this reaction to notions of body positivity, especially how the movement has been co-opted by thinner, whiter, cis women. And so and that onus as well on you to be accepting yourself and how that's become part of that movement now, although we know it didn't originate there. And so body sovereignty, at least in the work I'm doing, really is about this need and right to feel safe from physical harm and to be able to and in control of making decisions about the body. When we think about it in terms of health, it's often located in kind of discourses around sexual health, reproductive health, and things like childbirth as well. And so it's really about having this autonomy and this agency and the ability and access to make these decisions about your body, whatever they may be, and having that acknowledged and respected and recognized. And so from a Maori perspective, I've kind of talked about in my work, for Maori, we don't really have this concept of ownership that you would have from a westernized perspective. we don't own land, we look after land, we are guardians of land. And so that's kind of the same application that I've applied to our bodies, that we are able to have this agency and this sovereignty and this self-determination over our bodies. And we've always had that. The problem is that it continues to be disregarded, not recognized, and not acknowledged by the systems, the policies, the different institutions that we have to engage with in this current context. And so for Māori, in Te Reo Māori, in the Māori language, the words for fat, momona and tuawhiti also mean things like plentiful, bountiful, succulent, fertile. You know, they're actually connotations of good things, if you will. And so I think a lot of our culture really reflects the ways in which we understood fatness and we understood bodies and we understood agency and self-determination. And
is this making anyone else hungry? Is it because I'm kind of scheming in my head right now on like there's this like crab shack place near us that like is really, really good. It's this like awesome crab bakes. And you know, I'm kind of thinking I like maybe I want some crab. Maybe I want some seafood. Some like good, I don't know. It's kind of making me a little bit hungry. It is. What are you guys? What? Like, so yeah, is that making other people in the chat hungry too? Yeah. What are you guys ordering after this?
For my work, at least, it's really coming back to how can we reinstate those ways of being and those ways of understanding, and how can we get that reflected in our racist, sexist, ableist, ageist, healthist, every type of ist systems that we have to live in. And so that's kind of where my work sits.
Emily L's getting Indian food. Oh my God. Indian is the best. Indian is the best.
Yeah, I really love that. It's like so much of the language that we use to describe bodies problematizes them. But if we turn our attention to another culture and another way of knowing and being, we can understand that we can simply celebrate bodies with different terminologies and different perspectives, such that fat bodies are deemed abundant, you know, and plentiful, right? That's just so lovely. It's such a better orientation to being accepting and welcoming towards human beings, right? That's just very valuable. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. And like a lot of our Māori academics over here, Moana Jackson in particular, talks about our sovereignty as Indigenous peoples. We never ceded sovereignty. It's the fact that it's constantly disregarded. And that's the same case with our bodies, that our agency and our sovereignty and our self-determination is consistently disregarded despite how we may see ourselves. And so that's where my work is trying to focus on these systemic issues that perpetuate this and really rethinking what that looks like from an Indigenous perspective.
And we hope that you will keep us apprised of your work, especially me. Yeah, you hopefully have my email, but we'll stay in touch so that, you know, we can be aware of the connections between anti-Blackness and then also the destruction of Indigenous sovereignty, and thinking about how can we reorient our ways of thinking about living in this particular context at this time as Black and Indigenous peoples.
Absolutely. And just the last little bit is that real notion of policing of bodies, that simultaneous hyper and under surveillance of Black Indigenous bodies and the ways in which we continue.
So Patrice in the chat says, I've been overweight my whole life and this scares me. I don't want to be tormented by hate, but social pressure can be good when it pushes you to abandon bad habits. I mean, I think the thing of this is, Patrice, and we've seen this with critical race theory, creating an actual white identitarian movement that is bigger than people think it is. It's the same thing with any of these things. It's like the extreme LGBTQ activists create backlash to all gay people. And it doesn't even matter if like most gay people don't buy into the extreme like trans agenda of the LGBTQ activists, they're still going to receive the same backlash because people on the other side of the equation think that everyone is like that when they're not. And it's the same thing with people who are bigger. Like, I'm not skinny, man. And like like, I don't buy into the stuff these people are saying, but like, I might be labeled as being these people because people don't like my hair. They think I look like an SJW, all this stuff. And it's like, it's infuriating and it's really, really frustrating. And for people on the other side that are backlashing against, whether you're backlashing against critical race theory or backlashing against the LGBTQ stuff or backlashing against this, you have to really understand that most people don't feel this way. Most people don't feel this way, and you only create enemies when you treat other people as though they are extremists, because most of them are not extremists.
Genuinely are disregarded, but also policed. And so really thinking about how we can challenge that as well.
Yes, exactly. Right. The disregard and also the policing, the attempt to discipline or punish, which is ever present. So we'll turn also to Natalie. Natalie, you own the Pink Studio in Toronto, which runs dance and fitness classes for adults. Some fitness studios have a reputation for fat shaming, which you've already talked about briefly. How does your approach resist this fat hatred of fitness culture?
Thank you. It was really a lot of my personal experiences in, problematic spaces that motivated me to start my own studio and to start a business in an industry that is extremely problematic and very traumatic for people. When Uchman touched on profit and money, it's really what it comes down to when we talk about the fitness industry and the hate-fueled marketing that I see a lot of. I think on social media, my algorithm is really, I follow a lot of fitness people and gyms. And so
Elizabeth says, so when obesity leads to their deathbed in some way, will they die in denial? Yeah, they will, but it won't really matter because, after they die, they'll get to relive it in their life review. So yeah, they'll die in denial. Yeah, it'll be everyone's fault except theirs.
I'm bombarded with this. I always call it fear marketing, but now after listening to you all, I think hate marketing is more appropriate.
Wow, what a virtue signaling bitch.
To people that the worst possible thing that you could be is fat. And when folks are more worried about gaining weight during quarantine than they are about getting the actual virus, that says a lot about what we value as a society. And so really I'm trying to take an industry, the dance industry, yoga, fitness, have been very exclusive for far too long. And although I've started to see some changes in the last, couple years with people and businesses that are really trying to change that narrative and create a more inclusive environment, we still have really far to go in terms of gaining that trust back from a lot of people who have been, very hurt. And I've also learned as a plus size woman in this space, I still operate from a place of thin privilege because I am exist on the smaller end of the plus size community, so when I go into, workplaces and I talk a lot, do body confidence talks and things, it's very well received because it's very palatable from someone who is, my size, who is plus and curvy, but it's an acceptable amount of fat, and so what I've learned is also, recognizing my own privilege in that and trying to highlight, almost like Jill was saying, how you have to sometimes manipulate the words a little bit to get in the right rooms. I'm trying to use that voice to highlight other folks in the space who have been, shouting these things for years and have not been.
I find this idea that people need to lift up other people in the space or give voice to other people in the space, I find it to be incredibly, incredibly demeaning. It reminds me of like when, before the pandemic, because I was like on the keynote circuit before the pandemic when there were still like in-person events and things. And there was this whole movement where they were starting to put on conferences that were like only inviting women or only inviting BIPOC to speak at the conferences because they wanted to lift up these voices. And I was always incredibly offended by that because I was like, I want to be invited to speak somewhere because I can give a really good talk. I worked really hard to give a really good talk. And that's why I want to be invited. And I just find this idea that we have to lift you up. You can't do it on your own unless we allow you to. Because the thing of it is too, is when someone is when you get your power by someone else giving you that power, you are always going to be at that person's mercy, because if the only reason that you have been elevated or have a platform or any of those things is because someone has handed that to you rather than earning it yourself, that can always be taken away from you. You don't really have the power that you think you do, because if you are at someone else's whim, that can always, always, always be taken away from you. So it's incredible. I find it just incredibly troublesome that these people think like we need to lift people up. No, you don't. You need to give them the tools to lift themselves up, because that is the only way that you're going to make something sustainable. Yeah. I paused it in a good pose. I did.
And listen to.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you think the reception has been thus far as you've transitioned to trying to center the voices of other people?
It's it's beautiful. It's a big lesson. It's uncomfortable. It's not always beautiful. It's uncomfortable. There's so much learning, and there's so much to unpack in our own biases, and my own biases as a white person, and just trying to learn and engage and contribute to the conversation, but also trying to step back and when it's appropriate, and be an ally, but also be trying to pass the microphone, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I think that as a straight size person, and you who identifies as a thinner plus size person, it really is important for us, I think, to challenge other straight sized people or other people within our general weight space, because of the fact that it's so easy for people who are living through a particular lens of oppression to try and minimize the voices of people they think are too dissimilar, right? And they only want to talk to people who are kind of like them. And so I find that I'm most likely to speak up in spaces where I find that I'm around people who are more like me, right? Whereas if there are more people, right, yeah, because these are the people who really need to hear these kinds of voices. And then after that, I like to shut up and let other people who occupy these categories.
Yeah, exactly. Even just, kind of like sliding in with the subtle, conversations. I try to start with friends and family, even around something like clothing. When we see someone in a bikini in a bigger body or less clothing, and suddenly something is inappropriate or too revealing. But then I point out, okay, but let's scroll a little bit farther on your feed and look at all of these, models on Instagram that are wearing the exact same outfit, or they're wearing the bikini, or, and you didn't comment on this. You didn't have a problem with this outfit. It's not about the clothes. What makes this one inappropriate and this one is looked at as fashion or art? So just kind of just poking a little bit to be like, is your problem with the clothing? Because it seems like your problem's with the body. not the clothing. And just something simple as that, just to start to plant that seed, you know, in that subtle way helps, I find, a lot of folks really start to question those things.
Yeah, you know, and what you said reminded me of what I remember seeing. Obviously, when we think about someone like Lizzo, when she decided to show her thong when she was at the Laker game, right? The Lakers game. And I'm not sure how many of you are old enough to remember, so I'll just out myself as an old person. But when Halle Berry won the Academy Award, I'm pretty sure I remember that she was wearing a visible thong. And everyone thought it was fashion. You know, it's just like, ooh, slender, light-skinned girl, okay. But then it's like, oh, wait, a fat, dark-skinned woman? Oh, no, we can't allow that.
Well, there is a difference. There is
Oh,
a difference
thank you, Natalie, for that.
between winning an Academy Award. I don't know what she's talking about. Like, hang on. Let me Google this real quick, 'cause I don't know exactly what she's talking about. Lizzo thong Laker game. Hang on. Humor me for a second, because I do not know what she's talking about. Oh my God. Y'all can Google this for yourself if you want. Okay. Here's what I'm going to say. There is a difference between winning an Academy Award in a beautiful dress and twerking at a Laker game. There is a difference. I'm not going to show this on the screen. You guys can Google yourself if you want. But there is a difference between winning an Academy Award in a ball gown when you're all done up and have been in makeup for like 18 hours and twerking at a Laker game. Can we just acknowledge that? All right, we got about 15 minutes left.
Exactly.
Anshman, I want to turn to something that you have stated previously, which was, my life began when I decided to gain as much weight as possible.
Oh my
the
God.
moment I chose to become fat, everything changed.
Oh.
Can you speak a bit further about your...
My life changed the moment I decided to gain as much weight as possible. Listen, man, like, my weight goes up and down. It's up right now. It'll go down. It'll go back. Like, this is the story of my flipping life. My weight goes up and down. It is the way it is. But I would never, ever make the conscious choice to say, you know what? I'm going to try to gain as much weight as I possibly can. That's stupid. I'm sorry. That's stupid. I don't think there's any shame in gaining weight. But when you're purposefully doing it, it's crazy, man.
Your journey to this choice?
Look how happy he is.
I've got to say,
He's like so proud
I've
of
been very
himself.
excited about my COVID-15. No lie. Yeah, it's sorry, I'm only pausing because every time I think about what I like to consider sort of my previous life, it does hit me a bit. But I used to be much, much smaller. Like, there's straight size, and then there's past that. And I was deeply unhappy with my body, deeply, deeply unhappy. And I've written about this several times, but it's always weird to reckon with that. And I was that size for a variety of reasons. I was, so I'm a South Asian person, and the idea of obedience and...
Hang on. Breaking news. I have to show you this guy's Instagram account. I'm sorry in advance. It has to be done. I'm sorry. Hang on. I have to pull it up. Yo. Oh my... I don't know if I can show you this guy's Instagram account. This makes me very uncomfortable. This Instagram account makes me very uncomfortable. Okay, who wants me to show the Instagram account? Type Y if you want me to show it, type N if you don't, because then you guys are responsible. I'm giving you both, I'm giving you responsibility and accountability. Type Y if I am nervous about showing this Instagram account. I'm not even joking. I'm not joking. I don't know if I can. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. This is all on you. All of you, I wanted to be for the record that you all voted for this. If I get a strike, it's like I would just get a warning strike. This is my second channel. But like you all voted for this. I will show you this Instagram account of this guy in this presentation. Oh god. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. You guys asked for it. You did. This is your fault. Okay, window. All right, I'm just gonna scroll so I can see the chat. Let's just look at some of the pictures in the Instagram account. I don't know what exactly he's doing there, but that's something. Oh god! I didn't see what he was holding. Oh my god. This is his Instagram account. I can't. A former podcast producer who now runs a Patreon focus on erotic self-portraiture and who uses the pronouns they and them told me that they make an adequate living from that account and an OnlyFans page. But they said that there's a gap between the platform's message that anyone can build an independent creative career, as Patreon's website touts, the reality of being a solopreneur, blah, 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 blah. Remember, you all voted for this. Remember, this is the same guy. Oh my god! Oh my god! I'm stopping this right now. I'm stopping this right now. Remember, this was the guy that was like, I am censored on Instagram because I'm fat. Oh, Lou, you're getting a permanent ban, my friend. I'm sorry. Block, block, block. All right. All right. All right. All right. That was that. Let's get back to it, shall we? Let's finish up the last 15 minutes. Remember, you all voted for that. That wasn't my fault. You voted for it. It wasn't my fault.
Casteism and sort of, you just do what you're told. It's ingrained in me for a very long time. And I was raised in.
Emily says gaining as much weight as possible is like purposefully chain smoking, denying the high chance of cancer, and forcing everyone to applaud them. Literally, in the case of his Instagram account, hoping everyone applauds him. Yeah, Rachel's like, I tried to warn you. I tried. Don't say I didn't try, Rachel. I tried. I tried.
In a situation where your value was really determined by how beautiful you were. And of course, beauty was determined by white supremacist standards. So the thinner you were, the more you got to say. And that broke my brain, to be honest. I mean, so there was that portion of my life that was based on my upbringing. And I was also working under extreme precarity when I first moved to Toronto back in 2008. So I'm a radio producer. Or I guess I was in my former life. And I was working at the CBC, our nation's public broadcaster, in a this was during the Harper era. So a lot of cuts to the budget.
I'm still looking at the Instagram account against my better judgment.
Trickle down to, curiously, the most racialized people in any editorial team. So I was in this very precarious position where I wasn't making much money constantly working, basically starving myself. You know, I only had enough money for rent, my cat, or myself, two of the three things. And I thought, well, it's got to be rent, it's got to be my cat. And you know, it was a painful time to be starving. So
This Instagram account has broken me. It's broken me. It has. I don't know if I can stop looking. It's like a train wreck. I still have it on my screen. I can't stop looking. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is not a person to be taken seriously. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. Don't take him seriously.
So much, and yet to be praised for my productivity, to be accepted, and everyone thought everything was a-okay when it was most certainly was not. And then I got to a point in my life where I said, no, I'm done. I've always found fatness attractive. I honestly believe there's nothing more charismatic than a double chin. I decided I no longer wanted to be part.
Hang on, what?
I've always found fatness attractive. I honestly believe there's nothing more charismatic than a double chin. I decided I no longer wanted to be part of this system that takes sort of the.
Thank God I'm drinking. Who wants a drink right now? Who wants a drink? Who wants a drink? This is why we call it happy hour, folks. For these moments, right here. Oh my god! I wish I could say something more profound right now. I knew that. So, because here's the thing. Here's what's happened. Critical race theory has gone mainstream. And so it's like now people are being really careful in what they're saying around critical race theory. And Robin DiAngelo is starting to be distanced because she went around giving all these keynotes saying all white people are racist. And it's like, so the critical race theory, they're starting to switch in their messaging. But when you go into like queer studies and fat studies, they're still insane. And so I feel like on Happy Hour, we need to be watching far more of like the outer rings of critical theory, their training, because it's still insane. It's still insane.
Infinitude of the human body.
Infinitude of the human body.
Handful of boxes, containers, just so it can extract as much value as possible. And then it can discard the body. I wanted none of that anymore. So I deliberately started gaining weight. I still gain weight. I love it. And it's less about confidence. I know how that sounds, but it's more about attunement with my needs, with my own personal comfort. I am so comfortable with who I am. I derive so much strength from my fatness. I am more present towards my partner, their needs, to the people around me. When I decoupled myself from productivity, even if I'm not at my desk at work.
When I decoupled myself from productivity. Okay.
I could then start to think about other things. I could start to think about sort of, for example, the history of fat activism and fat liberation. I could start actually reading about concepts like prison abolition. I could start.
When I stopped doing actual work and became an OnlyFans model, then my day freed up to read crazy nonsense literature. That's what he just said. When I decoupled myself from productivity and focused on the things that made me happy and became an OnlyFans model and an Instagram model and had my Patreon, I had suddenly had time because I wasn't working to read nonsense all day. This is real. Yes. This is real. This is real life.
To make myself more available for mutual aid. I could make
mutual
myself
aid
available to help others organize. There was so much more I could do when I decided to step away from the realm of capitalism and hyperproduction
There it
and
is.
value extraction.
There it is. Capitalism. It always comes back to capitalism. When I decided to step away from the realm of capitalism and devote myself to these more worthy pursuits, it always comes back to capitalism every damn time. Every time. Every single time. Because critical theory, it's not about race, it's not about gender, it's not about being fat, it's not about disabilities. It is about attacking capitalism. That is its only goal. Wow.
And
Let's just like
I-
listen to that part again real quick, because I want to really emphasize this point.
About concepts like prison abolition. I could start to make myself more available for mutual aid. I could make myself available to help others organize. There was so much more I could do when I decided to step away from the realm of capitalism and hyperproduction and value extraction. And furthermore, I don't want to necessarily espouse a sort of assimilationist view about the fat body. It isn't that, hey, we're just as valuable as a straight-sized body. You can extract just as much value from us. Give us a seat in a boardroom. I don't think that's liberation either. I think it's more exciting for me to think about fatness in and of itself as its own technology, as its own practice, as a way of figuring out
Fatness as its own technology. Oh my God.
strange, exciting new movements of motion. We were talking about movement earlier and how motion is denied fat people of varying fatnesses, especially if you identify as super fat or infinity fat, especially if you're disabled. When motion can be really whatever you want it to be, there is literally so much more of us. We can do so much more with our bodies. And I think a lot about dance, but I think about, however you want to define motion. So it's really been this complete reset of my life and what I prioritize. And I honestly, all of us only have such limited time on this planet. I'm just so happy that I'm now here, being able to do the work I want to do in the vessel that feels right for me.
I'm watching Soylent Green later. It'll make me feel better. I'm totally watching Soylent Green later.
Thank you for that. And I think that there's a Drake quote that's circulating, and I don't know why I ended up quoting Drake on this, that we're here for a good time, not a long time, right? And so to the extent that giving up this whole pretense that dieting is important has enabled you to really embrace life.
We should do Soylent Green for a movie night at my locals. Who wants to do Soylent? Who is okay? Has that, like, because I know a lot of you guys are in my locals. Have any of you guys have seen Soylent Green, right? Would that be a good locals movie night movie?
And recognize that dieting was just this distraction all along that was supposed to keep you both unhappy.
Joe versus the Volcano is an
unhappy,
excellent movie.
More productive. That by letting all of that go, you can simply live your life in a way that is meaningful to you. That's really powerful. Yeah. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it.
And as we are coming close to the end of our panel, I'm always resistant to people asking me about how we're supposed to solve this problem, right? Because what we've all articulated is that this is one of many colliding problems, all of which fall under the umbrella of white supremacy. And so part of the question that I would have is not how do we end this, right? But what can we think about doing right now?
They Live would also be an excellent movie night movie, and we should invite Adam because Adam has yet to see They Live, and he really needs to see They Live. Anyone who hasn't seen They Live needs to see They Live because it's the best movie ever. It's one of my top 5 movies.
As part of our activism, as we're on that path to end white supremacy. And
Dogma's the best. Yeah, Dogma's a great movie. Dogma is possibly my favorite Kevin Smith movie.
I think one of the first things we can do is actually work internally to dismantle the fat phobia, the fat hatred within ourselves. I think it's actually a practice to begin to sort of not tie people's external, how they look, what they're able to produce to their work, like completely dismantling that internally, and the ways in which we interact in our interpersonal relationships. I also think it means centering the fat folks who are super fat and infinite fat, who are on the margins of the margins.
Super fat
in these
and infinite fat.
conversations regarding fat phobia and fat hatred, and making sure that they have the mic and that they are leading us. So yeah.
So like her. So what did she just say? Like, we should be centering people who are super fat and infinite fat, and they should lead us. And I think it's pretty safe to say she's going to fall into one of those two categories, and I will leave you all to judge which one. But isn't it convenient that she's advocating for people who are in her category to be leading the movement? Isn't that convenient? Because it's all about power at the end of the day. It's all about gaining power in any way they can.
Thank you, Maya. That's wonderful and powerful, right? Just doing the work of
wonderful and powerful, stunning and brave.
Right, that's always important.
I think one of the things we can do is call out anytime the casual fat phobia comments get tossed out. In the same way that white folks need to be better at calling out the casual racism that just exists in all of our workplaces and daily lives with families. So calling out those comments, and for myself also as a mother, I really think about the next generation too. I have a daughter, and I have worked so hard to change my language about my own body since she was a baby. She's 9 years old now, but I've worked really hard so that she is not hearing me body shame other people, body shame myself. And because growing up, that was how I bonded with other women. We bonded with each other through body shaming. And not until getting older did I really look back at that and realize how toxic that was. And it starts very young. So I also want to focus on the next generation. And I love what Jill is doing in schools, and starting these conversations with children at an elementary age, because and trying to undo some of the mistakes that I made and not pass that on.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's just a reminder that so much of what we are learning in the home. Obviously culture plays a tremendous role, and so does the media. But we have a different orientation to something if our parents are telling us that, we need to change, especially if it's about our bodies. So just being mindful in the way in which we are talking to young people about their bodies is so important. So thank you for that. Ash, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree with everything that's been said. I think a lot about the ways in which people get defensive over when they're called out or when we hold them accountable for the things that they're saying. And one of my good friends, Mama, Fat Mama on Instagram, PHAT, she just says so eloquently, never let your defensiveness override your willingness to learn. And that's the bottom line, really, is that people need to be willing and able to unlearn a lot of the white supremacy, a lot of the coloniality and the fat hatred that we've been taught since we were born, essentially. And so really thinking about the ways in which our experiences don't always reflect everybody else's experiences. Just because we don't experience something doesn't mean it's not oppressing other people and restricting their access. So really just being mindful and being accountable to the way we talk about our bodies, the way we talk about fatness, the jokes we use, all those sorts of things, and being willing to unlearn those things.
I really like that quote that you began with, because it's so true. So much of what we're experiencing, especially as we get to be older adults, is like the habitual energy of the thing. We're used to doing things in a particular way, and we want to stay stuck in that groove. And it's harder to come out of that, even though it's often beneficial for us, not to mention for other people, for us to make the attempt to do something differently, to learn, and to be much more compassionate.
Absolutely.
So it looks like we're almost out of time. Do we have any additional
Too
comments
bad.
from anyone on the panel?
So sad.
Well, in that case, I just want to thank everyone for a great conversation. So before we close, we'd like to thank our panelists, Dr. Jill Andrew, Maya Fano, Ashley Gillon, Anshman Idamseti, and Natalie Borsch. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. And thank you, of course, for the critical work that all of you are doing. Huge thanks to our interpreters from the Toronto Sign Language Interpreter Service who provided ASL interpretation for today's panel. This work and these conversations are very important.
All
They're helping
right.
us to reimagine the possibilities for a more just food system.
I guess that's it. That's all she wrote. Those interpreters were great. Do you ever wonder if the interpreters get assigned to do stuff like this and they're like, oh my God, this is insane. I wonder if they ever change the meanings of things. I'm sure that would be unethical and against like some sort of contract that they signed. But like, I think that I do wonder if they're like in their head going, this is insane, but I have to do my job. All right, guys, that is all we have for happy hour today. Now, next week, I will be back on my main YouTube channel after a 2-week ban for nonsense. And if you haven't heard this story, I will absolutely be telling this story on Monday when I'm back on my main YouTube channel. But of course, we always have Actively Unwoke. We do a happy hour here on Fridays. I'll probably be back doing happy hour on the main channel too, just to kind of like, I get so many more views on my main channel than I do on this one just because of the subscriber numbers. But I really do eventually want to move happy hour over here like exclusively. I just have things I need to do to start to build out the channel more before I do that. And I have plans for that. But in the meantime, the best place that you guys can catch me, whether you are watching on Facebook, on Odyssey, on Rockfin, or on my second YouTube channel, Actively Unwoke, the very best place you can always find me is in my locals community, kb.locals.com. You can join for free and lurk and see what the community is about. But of course, you can also support the work I'm doing by becoming a member, either a member at $5 a month or more if you are so inclined, $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. Or you can make one-time donations, which is always, of course, appreciated. And guys, please subscribe on whatever medium you're watching on, or like or subscribe or whatever the thing is. Please hit the like button, mount that like button. We will be back next Friday, every single week at 3 p.m. Eastern time for happy hour, where we will watch another crazy training, and I will see my locals members in book club for tomorrow, where we are going to talk about the Fountainhead, and I'm really looking forward to that. So take care, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Bye.